So, welcome back, everybody, to this amazing 7 Habits training. We are so grateful for each and
Oh,
every one of you that has carved out the time to be here with us, to be able to continue learning. And I'm going to go through here and just make sure that I've got everybody muted, okay? Perfect, perfect. This, I feel, is definitely continuing to build on the previous habits that we've had, and yet this habit. I feel it is not a coincidence that we are talking about it this week, that our world is in desperate need of more people that are seeking first to understand and then to be understood. And so Dondee and I are super, super happy to be able to bring this habit to you guys this week, to be able to continue in with the 7 Habits training that we've been doing together. So the first part of habit number 5 is, the principle. What is the principle around this habit? It is of respect. How many of you feel that we need to have first the understanding that respect is important? It doesn't mean that you're giving up your rights or you're giving up your opinion. It's just a matter of hearing what someone else has to say. So habit 5 is about truly listening to others and honoring their perspectives. It's also about having the courage to respectfully say what we think and feel. Again, it's got that respect word in there. You still get the opportunity to share your opinion and share your thoughts, but it doesn't come first. It needs to come second. So the paradigm here, the common one that probably each one of us that is on here today or those that are watching in the future is that I need to get my point across because it's important and because it's what I'm thinking. It's what I'm thinking or feeling, right? Well, in reality, if we truly want to be highly effective in our communication and interactions with other human beings, the paradigm needs to be to communicate effectively with you. I need to understand you first. So, when we're talking about respect, we do need to earn other people's respect. We can't demand respect from others in any circumstance. So I love this quote by Stephen R. Covey. And we have such a tendency to rush in to fix things up with good advice, those thoughts that come to our minds. But we often fail to take the time to diagnose, to really deeply understand the problem first. And so that's really what we're going to be diving into today on the habit number 5, seek first to understand and then to be understood. And Dondee, I'll go ahead and let you take in here if you want.
absolutely. Thank you, Marcy. And I think not only the events, the recent events in this world, but also the profession that we're in, we have to be able to understand that this fifth habit, listening to understand before being understood, is so critically important because we come across people that have either heard negative things about network marketing, they've experienced a previous bad experience, and that now becomes the platform or the paradigm from which they operate. It may be their truth or their experience, that it doesn't mean the same for everyone, because this is the first company I've ever been involved with, and it's been wonderful. But I can relate to other people that have had different things, but unless we understand each other, and this is recent with a conversation that Dr. Pat just recently had with a potential colleague who has all the criteria, has all the pedigree, has all the exposure, has all the ability to do wonderful in this business, but could not get over their previous paradigm or their bias, and was certainly not open to listen to Dr. Pat. In fact, was disrespectful. It seemed almost on purpose. And so it's something we have to deal with in a regular basis. And it's something, if we choose to be network marketing professionals, but it's also something common in the world. But the way out of this is if we go back to last week's habit that Sarah and Chris talked about, being able to find a win-win. And so this is really what it is. And I love the approach. One of the first things is what does a win look like for the other person? Most of us will probably never ask that question. But if we come from that place, then we can truly serve this habit and serve the people who we're sharing information with. And so it was like Marcy just said that in that bullet point. Sarah did a masterclass on this last week. And if we could, that's what I love about all these habits, tend to build on one another. And if we could look at it from the other person's perspective, especially if we have opposing views, what would a win look like for them and how to effectively communicate with that person. And the only way to do it is to understand them or do our best to understand them. And depending upon our frame of reference or our upbringing or example, we may not be able to understand them or have empathy because we've never lived that way, but at least we can appreciate that that's how they understand it, even though ours may be different. This is critical in it. This is what listening empathically is, rather than listening autobiographically, which is filtering everything a person is saying or every piece of information you're going through, filtering it through your own experience and expecting someone else's experience or their upbringing or their viewpoint or their ideology to be just like yours. They can't be if they've had a very different or in some cases opposite experience. So shutting off your own thinking is the only way you can truly hear the other person. And that's where it comes down to what this entire habit focuses on is respect.
Yeah, so the practices for habit 5 are first, listening empathically, and then second, respectfully seeking to be understood. So what does it mean to listen empathically? Well, let's first talk about what it's not. So when you listen autobiographically, you filter what others say through your experiences, values, and perspective. Basically, you're taking what they're sharing with you and you're making it you, all about you. And that is not the way to listen if we want to be effective. So when we listen empathically, you build connection and trust by seeking to truly understand the other person's perspective. So we want to listen to understand. This means we're going to keep our thoughts out of our listening to truly hear, to understand. I don't know about you guys, but this is something that up until recently I really struggled with. And it really meant that I had to first really become aware that I have all these different thoughts going on in my mind. And I really was waiting to respond, not trying to listen to understand and hearing what the other person was saying. And so it's really taking practice and patience with myself and, communicating with those that I'm talking to and apologizing, being real, being humble, and making others aware that's like, hey, you know what? I am so sorry. I didn't fully hear what you just said. Would you please tell me again? Because I want to hear you, right? Because we want to make sure that we let the other person know that what they say and what they think is important. Whether I agree with them or not does not matter. It's that I am listening to them. So you want to listen fully to what the other person is saying without interjecting those thoughts and making their story turned into your story, right? So, I mean, think back to a time to where you were having a conversation and somebody shared something with you and you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, this just happened to me too, right? Your input is important, yet the order in which it happens is more important. And so we've got to make sure that we're just listening, we're not interjecting, and we're letting the other person share the things that are in their mind and on their heart and how it makes them feel. So even if you do not agree with what is being shared, listen to and for the perspective. We do not have to agree with what is being said. We want the other person to feel heard. And this bullet point right here is what we could so focus on and just really understand that there are so many different opinions in the world. Yet, if we can take habit 5 and make it part of who we are, we too can be part of a catalyst that can help people start to understand each other instead of always being in conflict with each other. So respect starts by how you listen. Okay.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And this, so when it comes down to implementing this or making, especially if this is foreign to you, this is really, really applicable because once this is kind of like awareness. And I've shared this example before. When I bought the first car, my very first vehicle, it wasn't the car I wanted. But before for months, actually years before I actually purchased my first car, I wanted a Mercury Capri. And that was the car that I wanted. And I saw them everywhere in every color, every modification. All I could see was Mercury Capris. And then when it came down to buying one, I didn't have enough money to afford it. So I ended up in a Datsun B210, which I had never, ever seen before until I'm behind the wheel of one. And then even on the way home from purchasing the car, I started noticing them everywhere. And well, they're not around anymore. This was before they were called Nissans. This was back in the the mid 80s. And so it was just interesting that they were always there. I just didn't have an awareness. Well, once we understand how this habit works, we're going to notice when it's working in the people that we dialogue with, whether we it's like, I bet you this person probably read the Seven Habits book because they're being respectful to me, they're listening to me, they're repeating back if there's something no to understand. And then there's going to be very obvious for people who have never read this, don't understand it at all, and they have never really taken these 4 steps to empathically listen, which is why we can just pray for them or share the book with them or do what we want done for us to them and repeat back and try to understand. But the first one is just honor the fact that this is happening and honor the fact that the person you're trying to accomplish or trying to have a conversation with, they may not know this. Don't judge them, their words, their actions, their opinions, or anything. Just honor them and speak from a place of respect that you're trying. And it's a good exercise for us, especially if you think that there's some opposition or at least difference of opinion, to really utilize this ourselves and truly understand. And I wish this book was an absolute mandate for anybody in public office, because I think it would solve so many different things, or at least create a lot more respect than we currently have. And then the next is just check in or paraphrase back what you, not in their own words, but paraphrase back. This is what I thought I heard you say. Is that correct? Or sounds like this, and check in with them. And then you're going to know, one, it's when people do that with you, it makes you feel great because one, they're actually listening to me. And we got a review in the office that I work for. I personally got a review online, this person who was a patient of the VA, the Veterans Administration, and he said for the first time, and I can't remember how long, thank you, Dr. Dondee. He was the first doctor that actually listened to me and tried to find a solution rather than telling me everything's made up, I'm making everything up or exaggerating everything. And I thought, one, I received the compliment, but I thought the bigger picture was how unfortunate it must be to be that person and feel so unheard or not listened to by the healthcare providers that you're actually asking or seeking their ability to help you through whatever it's working on. So I thought it was it was cool, but it was very sad at the same time. But check in, make sure that the person you're talking to understands that you understand them and that you're checking in. The next is just process.
Well,
Take,
before we move on to process, babe, let's talk
yeah,
a little bit more on the check in and to really repeat back what people are saying. Could you speak into that a little bit more to be able to
yeah.
make sure that you're understanding correctly? And then 3 and 4 on the next page.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think I have a better framework going into network marketing than most people being trained as a healthcare provider, because this has always been an important part of how I render healthcare is listening to what's going on so that you can make a proper diagnosis, help the person through it. But the first thing is really checking in, repeating back. Is this this is what I heard? Is this what's going on? Can you tell me more? When did this happen? What makes it better? What makes it worse? As an example, as a typical conversation with a patient. But and you can give them an emotion when you can repeat back to them, because sometimes it's been going on a long time. There might be some frustration. There might be a little animosity toward previous healthcare providers and just this specific content or context. Or it's a person you're talking about who's had a bad experience at another company. Sounds like you've got a little distrust in this industry. How did that happen? Tell me more about your experience. Sounds like there's a story behind that, as Eric Worre says all the time. And then what I'm hearing is this, and repeat back to them what you are summarizing based on what that person is telling you. And now you can literally diffuse, is probably the best term, to diffuse something that when we're going to talk about here in the next couple slides, when their emotion is high and their trust is low, that's typically what creates something like this. You can diffuse that and start to restore trust, or at least a little bit of trust. And it's a great process and it's a building, but when people feel like they're being heard, trust can rapidly develop.
Yes, thank you for that. The thing about this is that too often, if we're not repeating back to the person we're conversing with, we may be making assumptions, and assumptions will always get us into trouble in conversation. So please utilize this step in the listening process. So then number 3
Mhm.
is the process itself. Take time to fully consider the meaning of their words rather than responding rapidly or filling every silence or pause. Silences in a conversation can be so powerful because both of you are taking time to really consider what is being said. The person that is speaking is making sure that the words that they're using, and even times when you don't fill in that pause, it gives them the chance to really think something through that maybe they just said so they can clarify or that they can add to, right? And then if you're jumping in at every single pause, you're not really listening to understand, you're waiting to respond. And so it's another way of showing the person you're talking with you're really listening to you and what they have to say really matters. And so try to suspend your desire to respond automatically. Take that extra moment to think about what they're saying and what it really means. Don't jump in to fill every silence because the speaker is the most important one right now. Your job is to listen, not to speak. And then the fourth one is have wonder. Be curious about what's going on in this conversation and in the mind and in the heart of the person that you're talking to. Being curious can look like asking clarifying questions that give the other person space to express themselves. So these can be, for example, can you tell me more about that? Or simply tell me more. I mean, when someone is talking, or think about this, when you're talking, and if someone says, hey, tell me more about that, or hey, I'd like to hear more about that. How does that make you feel? Does it make you feel like you're being listened to and what you have to say is important? Or the other 100%, you feel heard, and that is exactly what a human being needs. Another one is, what do you think is best in this situation? How about what do you think will happen next? Right? So if someone is in a circumstance to where they're trying to figure out what they should do or figuring things out, instead of giving the solution as the listener, asking them, what do you think will happen next if? Right? What do you think would happen next if you do what you're thinking right now? Or what do you think could happen if you do what you're thinking right now? And just give them a moment to think about that a little bit deeper. And then what might that look like? Who will it affect? So we're actually giving people to get opportunity to solve their own problems with critical thinking, with their own, experiences, and not just relying on someone else's input. And I love this question. How does that make you feel? How would that make you feel if that was the outcome? Right? It really gives the feeling that you're truly caring about them and what is going to come out of this situation. So make sure that you use these 4 steps: the honor, check, process, and wonder in your empathic listening. You want to take it from here, babe, or you want me to keep going?
Yeah, I want to kind of, can you go back one slide?
For sure.
So, and I want to just talk about sometimes in the process, you can actually wonder while you're processing. And so one, and it's really it's that pause or that gap filler, because oftentimes when someone, especially if there's emotion that is high and they really just want to vent, and that pause, it's not a pause waiting for you to respond. Oftentimes they're just gathering the next information that they're about to tell you in the next sentence. So in that pause, and this is something it's difficult, especially for people like for me, it's difficult because in the capacity of either being a healthcare provider or being the expert on a call, a three-way call or a Zoom or something like that, it's kind of expected that I'm going to give some feedback. But at that pause, oftentimes it's not the time. And so to ask a question, to get more information in that pause, one, it makes them feel more empowered that you're actually listening and that you're not there to solve the problem yet. If that even that the even what they wanted, sometimes people don't want a solution. They just want to vent because they don't have anybody to vent to. And when they're venting and they're in that pause, tell me more about that. You can put wonder in process while you're processing. It doesn't have to come one after the other. That's just what I wanted to add to that.
Oh, that's great.
Now you can go to the next slide. So in this whole respectfully seeking to be understood, kind of think of it like a traffic light. And when especially when emotions are high and trust is low, it's the if you just feel it's emotional and they're getting short with your responses, or your questions, then sometimes it's just take a breath, process it, and realize when this red light is happening, when emotions are high and things, the person's maybe on edge, you need to get to the heart of the issue. Realize this is about them. This is absolutely imperative that you understand where they're coming from, and maybe this is the person who doesn't need a solution; they just need an audience, and that the person doesn't feel understood if you're interjecting, and it still stays at that red light. But it's easy when you do this right and you really master this fifth habit to take it from a high red light situation, volatile situation, down into a yellow situation and into a green light situation where you've got the trust. The emotions are now low and the trust is high, and it has everything to do with how you feel the back and forth. But the red light is, it's if you feel your blood pressure start raising and you're feeling you want to say something, that's a pretty good trigger for you that this is a red light situation and you're responding to their elevated emotion. It's best then to pause, take a step back, get to the heart of the issue, try to see the win or what would be a win for that person, and then feel like they're understood, and then yell, slow down. Just watch, listen, feel, and be there empathetically and to feel their emotions, and because you can feel the energy when it goes from a red light to a yellow light. It's just almost like they're breathing, and now they're becoming more vulnerable, actually, which is now where increased support and repeating back to them in that whole process and wonder situation, and then to go to a green light. And it doesn't take long when this is done right. And when I say master this habit or turn the skill into a habit, and this isn't something, especially with opinionated people or people that have a pretty good confidence level about themselves, it's a very difficult skill to master, but it can be done. That's just why it's repetitive and getting into as many conversations as possible. And what better to do that in network marketing? We can put ourselves into as many conversations as we are comfortable with in a 24-hour period. And this is practicing on this is critically important. And in the green light, the issue becomes clear. It's mutually understood. You're on the same page. You're on the same wavelength. You're feeling each other. And now the person has a high trust level. And this is where the vulnerability in you to repeat back to them, because that obviously people are vulnerable when they're in this situation. When you can be vulnerable right back, they say, what is one of the biggest superpowers in network marketing? Your vulnerability. And your vulnerability, when it's in alignment with how you understand, because you've asked the questions, you are listening first to understand, it is one of the most beautiful things to partake of. And it takes from a low trust to a high trust pretty quickly. And then the conversation, it's casual, it's unemotional. You're just talking about really the bare bones things. And most of the time, emotions are just a fuel on the fire of something else. And then once that's been diffused and you're talking about you're not emotional, you're talking in high trust, and it's you've just literally been asked to give counsel or advice, they're going to be totally open and receptive. And then whether it's coming from this, when you are listening to be or we're listening to understand and the advice comes from that place and you're asking yourself what would be a win like for this person, trust levels at that moment become super super deep and literally can diffuse a situation, a very highly emotional situation, very quickly if you're honoring this right here, on literally respectfully seeking to be understood first.
Yeah, and it's at this green
That's
light is where you can then, you know, share what you have to share, your thoughts, your concerns, that sort of thing. But you need to go through the red and the yellow first in the empathic listening to be able to get to the green to where you can then share your perspective. So, when will listening be beneficial in your business? Okay. So obviously in new conversations with prospects to learn their needs and whether they are open. You can't just go in and say, hey, I've got something that's going to be perfect for you. Do you want to hear about it? If you don't know what they've got going on in their lives, they may have something to where they've just absolutely got their ears closed to any information that you might be bringing them because you don't know and understand them and they haven't shared with you. How about three-way conversations to learn the thoughts, desires, and understanding of prospects, and then also to help with any concerns that they might have? Helping new consultants lean into their why. This is going to be so powerful for you to be able to utilize these listening skills in conversations with new consultants as you're helping them understand, first of all, what a why is, and then letting them speak and share with you what's important to them, what concerns them, what their desires are, and as you're helping them get started properly in their business. Every time a business partner or a customer has questions, anytime conflict in the team shows up, because we are human beings, there will be conflict, and utilizing these skills in this habit is going to be essential for the outcome that's going to be a win-win for everyone. And then basically, anytime you have an interaction with another human being, because we all desire to be heard and understood. And if we can put everybody into that position, the outcome will be so much better than if we are just trying to be getting our viewpoint across or our perspective. Okay. So keep in mind, a lot of things can be true. Remember that you have a viewpoint of things from where you're standing right now. The person that you're going to be having a conversation with also has a viewpoint from the position of where they are standing right now. You're not in the same place. And so know that your perspective and the other person's perspective can be right and it can be true. And so having the respect and being able to empathically listen, going through the green, yellow, and red is going to get you both to the place to where you're understanding each other's perspectives better before you can really get into the depth of the conversation. So go ahead, babe.
And so when it comes down to this, putting this into practice and actually implementing this, giving it a shot, yet think about it, how might you express yourself more clearly, respectfully, and concisely, so as when you are talking, that person understands where you're coming from, because this works both ways. When you're trying to explain something or you're trying to learn something from somebody who's trying to explain something to you, the first thing is listen to understand first. It's critical. That comes from your credibility. Are you coming in? This is where credibility in a three-way call is so critically important. And so the person who's the credible person is literally the stranger to the prospect, because everything in that three-way call setup comes from the person who is giving the invite to the prospect. It's where edification comes in, and they can give and extend that credibility. This is the faith that the other person who I'm talking to has the knowledge, has the understanding, is coming from an integrous place, and can help me navigate through this challenge, whether it's a physical challenge, a financial challenge, or both, or something, or we don't like our career and now network marketing becomes a potential. And so it's coming in as a trusted partner with credibility. Credibility is the first step here, assuming that that's there. And if it's not, edifying that into place. And as somebody who's done this before, they're the person of authority, they have the background, they've got the experience, they've got the knowledge, and they generally want to do their best for us. That's the first thing. Credibility is where it starts. And then the next is the emotional, the heart of this thing. Because what do they say about network marketing? It's a heart-based business because it's a person-based business. And so when you can deal with people, they say one of the hardest things about network marketing is dealing with people. But one of the most beautiful things about network marketing is dealing with people. And so when you can be a heart-centered person and you're listening and you're in your heart space and you're matching emotion with emotion and you're communicating with true understanding, trust develops so rapidly. And as the person of authority, most of the time in a situation, they are the stranger, but the stranger can gain rapport and credibility and trust by this being in this heart space and just simply coming from the right place. And repeating back, it sounds like you're frustrated or this, and you're giving that whole, when they process and wondering and letting them know what they're saying, they're being heard, share your excitement about it with them and also your vulnerability. And then it's most of the time, because this is not how people communicate, people will perceive, wow, this is very different. I'm feeling a strong alliance with this person. I trust this person. This seems like a home for me. And that's why this is one of the most critical habits that, especially with brand new people in network marketing, we're sharing this. And then the other thing is in your head. Now you can assemble the logic, the evidence, the pathway that you've done, your experience implemented, and take it from sharing data with somebody or research and facts and figures figures into the emotion, you can assemble all of that, the benefit, imagine what your life is going to be like when you don't have the pain in your body. Imagine what life's going to be like when you don't have the brain fog, how much more efficient you're going to be as a human being, as a mother, as a father, as a son, whatever the role that is most important to them, again, based on their why, and giving them that reassurance is like, this is where I'm supposed to be. They're telling themselves, this is awesome. I feel home here. And if they're coming from our product standpoint, we're talking about our science. We also have this benefit for the researchers in the room and the people that are in their head to start with. Being in your head is great. When you can feel in your head and in your heart at the same time, both ways, whether you start in the heart and go to your head and rationalize why you're there, or you start in your head and go to your heart and then just the emotion anchors in why you're there, it's a win-win no matter what. But having the credibility, the authority figure, getting into the emotional exchange back and forth, and in showing that person the data, the evidence collected, whatever it is, to help them be aligned with their why and realize they're here, it is a mastery or a master class when this is done properly.
So most people don't listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. Stephen R. Covey. Let's
Yes.
not be most people. Let's be those that start with empathic, listening to understand before we try to be understood. So your homework for this week, choose one person you want to practice listening empathically to this week. How will you use empathic listening? That 4-step process of honor, check, process, and wonder to fully understand the other person. So make your plan, choose someone and then make your plan and then follow through with it. And then review the 7 habits poster in the journal on the questions for habit number 5. The question is, how might taking the time to listen to others help you make progress in the goals that you set at the very beginning of this 7 habits training? And then 3, review the cards for habit 6 for habit synergize. We will be coming back to you, and both of those can be found in the Telegram group. Dondee and I will be with you again next Saturday for habit 6, and that is the synergy habit. And we are super excited to see you all next week.